Hi, I'm Matt Hill, Deputy Editor of T3, and this is our resident gaming expert, Nick Cowen, and we're back to talk about PS4 versus Xbox One again, post-release, because we've both got them in our homes now. Because of the sake of time and getting through all the games, we decided to divide and conquer. So Nick took Xbox and I took PlayStation. So how did you find the setup?
Surprisingly easy, actually, probably because I've spent the last 6 years messing around with Microsoft kit. But yeah, it came nicely packaged. I was quite surprised at how heavy it was and how heavy the Kinect module was. It just seemed to be these big bricks made up of vents.
Did you have to shift your TV around? How did you get it on? Because I know for a fact that once I get it in my house, I'm going to have to actually move around the stuff underneath my TV.
No, what I did was, well, I've actually got a purpose-built thing on rollers. So I just pulled it away from the wall, stuck it under there. I did make one cretinous mistake. I stuck the HDMI cable in the in rather than the output one.
Well, you don't often get to.
Exactly. Yes. Then I could connect it up to my television and channel surf using Kinect.
That worked well?
Yeah, worked pretty well. There's a bit of a sometimes there's a bit of a judder effect. Right. But you know, mostly it was pretty intuitive. So how did you find the PS4?
Yeah, pretty easy. I mean, I got the camera with it, which obviously wasn't boxed in. I got it on top of, and that worked really well. And I mentioned that first because obviously it's got the facial recognition thing. The setup's really easy. There's no power block or anything. You literally just plug it in, plug and go. Yeah, really easy setup. Obviously, we were on the US servers to start with, so I had to set up a US account, but most people won't have to do that. Now the UK servers are up. PSN works fine. As expected, you know, the PSN stuff you bought on PS3 doesn't transfer over, but it all seems to set up fine. It seems to set up good. DualShock sync really easy. Yeah, it was ridiculously easy to set up. Really, the camera was really easy, and setting the camera up was really easy as well. Like facial recognition was very strong. Voice recognition is very strong, surprisingly strong. There's been a lot made out of Kinect, but I was actually quite surprised how good the PlayStation camera is, just for the basics. For recognising your face and for finding stuff through menus and for taking screenshots. Actually, it was very good through that. So no, it was all fine for me.
The thing is that Kinect actually plays a very big part in the new user interface. I mean, when you set up your account initially, you just type in your gamer tag and the password to your old account, and it literally just brings all of your achievements, all of your save games, and you know your gaming history right across. And you know, Kinect will then recognise you, and every single time you boot up the Xbox One, it goes, "Hi, Nick," or whoever is in the room. Right. If two people sit down, yeah, it's kind of a cute Orwellian thing, because when someone sits down next to you, they'll recognise them as well, and they have the option of signing in. Right. The other thing about it is,
to be fair, the PlayStation does that as well. Oh. I mean, you know, again, a lot's been made out of Kinect and the things that it can do. But actually, I was quite surprised. Matt King, one of our video guys, came over and we were playing it, and we set him up as another user, and it did exactly the same. Recognises your face as long as you've got the light bar on the DualShock held up. Every time it got us, you know, it got us right every time. I was genuinely quite surprised. It doesn't say anything as annoying as your name every time you log in, but it's it recognises you every time, and you can you do it on Xbox? You can switch between profiles.
Yeah, you can.
So you click the PS button, and it will so basically you have your whole range of everything attached to your profile, and then you just jump between them whilst you're both logged in, which is really handy.
The thing is, on the Xbox, you can also do it, obviously, using your voice commands. The other cool thing about the Xbox, which is pretty cool, is the fact you can set it up so if you wander into your room, you can go Xbox on, and it will boot up. Yeah. It will start on its own accord. Apart from that, the user interface is kind of similar to how it was on the Xbox 360. You can still use hand gestures, use still an array of voice commands. Although now, the sort of layout looks like a pared down version of a Surface tablet. Right. So you have all these different squares on the screen.
Yeah, it's very Windows 80, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the menus are broken now only into 3 different categories. You've got pins, which is essentially like, you know, all the apps that you use the most, you pin them. Yeah. So if you watch, say, for example, 4OD, and you don't really use a lot of the other audio-visual kind of applications, instead of having to scroll through a series of menus like you would on the Xbox 360, you can literally just pin that one app on your pins page.
That's really useful. I like that. And PlayStation doesn't do that, which is slightly annoying, because I mean the main interface is the kind of dynamic tiles, which is the same kind of thing, but it's all in a row, and it's literally sequential. So it's what you've been using. So if you don't play a game for a little bit, and in the interim you watch a film or you play another game, that game gets shifted further and further back, and you can't have that held there. So yeah, that's a little bit frustrating. But I mean, at the same time, it's very simple, and also you hover over that, and it'll pull down a whole kind of social feed based around whatever you've been using. So, you know, if you're playing, I don't know, Call of Duty, or you're playing Resogun or something, it will bring up not only your achievements and what you've been playing, but also what your friends have been playing, that you've given access to, and you're kind of seeing different things, and it kind of makes you competitive from the screen. I mean, there's a lot about PlayStation that looks very familiar to PlayStation 3. It has, you know, the orchestral strains when it starts up, and it has a very similar background. But there's a cross-media bar above, which holds all the kind of more in-depth stuff. So like what the PS3 is, if you flip up from the dynamic tiles, that's there, and that has all your kind of connectivity and all your kind of broader system functions. That's all hidden away, so you don't really kind of have that originally. But I mean, it's really easy. I mean, it's not very customizable, which I think is what Xbox have nailed, for better or worse. I think you can kind of move more stuff around than Xbox.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you obviously you can't change the size of the tiles yet. We don't know what they've got planned in the future, but you can basically, you know, the pins is a great example of that. You can customize your favorite apps, your favorite games. You know, you can even customize your own color schemes. Right. Bring across avatars and stuff like that.
Okay.
The third.
The avatars are really good on Xbox, actually. I've seen them online, and the PlayStation ones, they're just the same ones you had on previously been on PSN.
Yeah.
So I've still got my lemming head that I had from like PS3, but I think Xbox has got a load of new ones as well, which is kind of, obviously that could be added later on. Yeah. Obviously, the best bit about PlayStation is the DualShock 4, which is, for my mind, the best PlayStation controller so far. I always found the DualShock 3 quite small and slippery in your hand because it was quite plasticky. This is a lot more weighty. The sticks are further apart, which is better for me if you've got slightly, you know, if you haven't got tiny hands, that's quite handy. It's kind of textured, so the grip's really good. It's ergonomic, and the trigger buttons now are kind of very flush rather than sticking out, which is kind of really kind of aids grip and aids your kind of like reactions if you're as bad as me. But the good thing is now that the PS button acts as a home button, like on an iPad or whatever, so it constantly brings you out without shutting things down, which is really handy, and you basically use it for pause, even though options was clearly meant for pause, you just use the PS button all the time. But the other thing is share, which is really interesting, because obviously you can broadcast out to Ustream or Twitch direct if you want, which we've already seen really interesting people do, like a couple did a chat show. Did you see that on Twitch?
No.
Really interesting, so broadcasting from their PS4, which is really, really novel. And I think a lot more people will do that. It's kind of starting a kind of a bit of a phenomenon, but also it can take screenshots and it can record video. But what I like about the Xbox, which it doesn't have, is an edit studio.
Yeah, it's called Upload Studio, and it's a very big part of what Microsoft are doing with the Xbox One. Although at this particular time, when you make yourself your clip, you have to record the voice, any voiceovers while you're playing the game. There's no functionality to add it later.
Right.
Obviously, this could change in the future. We don't know. And also, right now, you can't really share it with anyone other than other people on Xbox Live, because the app for YouTube hasn't come through.
It's the same with
so
PlayStation.
far.
It doesn't share out. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a nifty little function. As far as the controller goes, it's a little bit kind of finicky when you first get hold of it, because you're not really sure what the apps button does or the menus button does. You know, the stud in the center pretty much does what you'd expect it to. If you're in the middle of a game and you want to pause it, it's like the PS4 button. It just pulls you straight out of the game. But to tell you the truth, I think that the Xbox One controller is a marked improvement on its predecessor. It just feels like it fits more snugly in your hand. The triggers feel really sort of weighty. You can't even hear the springs behind them. You know, you click in the shoulder buttons or the D-pad, it's very, very sort of light to the touch. And then, of course, you've got the rumble triggers, which really sell the console, especially on a game like Forza. Because like, when you pull the trigger on Forza, not only can you feel the rumble triggers, you know, simulate the feel of a roar of an engine, but there's even that kind of give between gear changes, which is amazing.
Okay, you mentioned Forza, so I mean, what are the games like? I mean, I always thought that on the launched lineups, especially after some of the things dropped on PlayStation, Xboxes look stronger.
Well, you see, this is the funny thing, is that like, for someone like me, there's no real kind of killer app at the moment. I mean, if you're a petrol head, Forza's amazing. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's running at 60 frames per second, native 1080p. When you're zooming down a straightaway, it's actually really, really thrilling. And it shows off the power of the cloud gaming that Microsoft have been banging on about since year dot. Because you never race against the AI in Forza. And what they actually do is, you know, Forza, what it does is it monitors how you drive. Well, are you aggressive? Are you sneaky? Do you shove other cars into the walls and things?
All of the above for you.
Yeah. Well, are you rubbish? Exactly for me. And after 3 or 4 races, it builds up something called a drivatar, which was one of the you know,
one of the buzz phrases from E3 with Levolution.
That and Levolution. And what happens is that your drivatar gets uploaded to the cloud, and then instead of competing against an AI, the cloud just takes a bunch of drivatars from a bunch of other players and flings them into your game.
Does you really notice? Does it feel any different from driving against a computer?
Yes, and I think purists won't like it because every single corner right now with all of my friends in those drivatars is a mad scrum where everyone's T-boning each other. It's not a very elegant thing. The other thing that might annoy people is the microtransactions in Forza 5.
Yeah, I've read about that.
Right now,
one car cost about 30 quid or something.
32 quid.
Yeah.
It can cost 32 quid. I mean, you can grind through the game and you can earn these cars just by playing it, which is what you're probably supposed to do. But
or if you're rubbish.
If you're rubbish, I hope you have a lot of money. But Turn 10, in all fairness to them, they say that they're looking at it at the moment and they may readjust that pricing later on. Microtransactions also come into play in Rise, but usually that's things like baubles for your gladiator in the Colosseum. Rise is one of those games that I think I like it like I would like a wrong-headed child of my own, mainly because it looks amazing.
Yeah, the graphics are stunning.
As a showcase for what the graphical capabilities of the Xbox One. It's up there with Forza.
Yeah, I remember at E3, the Crytek guys basically saying they were given the brief that no game should touch this for 6 months.
Yeah, well,
visually, that's all they were going for.
Well, I mean, it's likely that won't happen. That will happen. But what the problem is that it's a hack and slash which has absolutely no sense of flow or rhythm, which is very, very weird. Like, you know, mechanically, something like Devil May Cry or God of War has it for breakfast. But it's fun. I mean, I had a weird relationship with Rise. I started off utterly hating it. By the middle of it, I really, really liked it. And by the end, I just thought, this is just bonkers. Because I was dodging elephants in the middle of Rome that were being ridden by the Britons. And that's another thing about Rise, its story is utterly inane.
Yeah,
but,
and with no concept of historical accuracy. I think everyone's kind of...
Let me tell you something, it's less historically accurate than Zack Snyder's 300. It really is. The only other major title from the launch, which I really sank my teeth into, was Dead Rising. And that was a lot of fun to play. Like I said, I don't think it's something that I would gravitate towards to as a killer app, but it's loads and loads of fun. You go around customizing weapons, customizing vehicles, rolling over seas of zombies. I mean, there are tons of them everywhere, and you know, I've heard that there have been frame rate slows for other players, but there wasn't any on mine. But yeah, it's a bit of a grab bag as far as launch titles goes. How's was the PS4?
Well, it's got Resogun, so I'm a happy man. As a big fan of Super Stardust and Housemarque's previous games, I genuinely love Resogun. I think it's absolutely amazing. I gave it 5 out of 5 on T3.com. I am still playing it now, and I will still be playing it this time next year because it is just a brilliant twin-stick shooter. It's like a kind of modern Defender with, I mean, it's classic really with PlayStation that like the major game that's got me going for it is an indie game effectively, which is about 12 quid. Yeah. You can download quite quickly. And the most fun I've had on it actually is playing it remote play, which works really bloody well. So Vita connects with it really easily over, it's just a code system, so it's not over a network, which is fantastic. And it's really, really good. Hardly any lag, and the tiny little dual sticks on the remote play are absolutely brilliant for twin stick shooters, because Super Stardust Delta on it showed that it works perfectly. The big problem is they map the touch panel as buttons, because obviously you don't have the push-in sticks for the button, and you don't have the second shoulder button, and they map all of these onto the touch panel. Unfortunately, the touch panel, as good as it is for some things on a Vita, is absolutely terrible for getting quick reactions and hitting it every time. Right. And unfortunately, on Resogun, the bomb is mapped to that, which you kind of need at very drastic moments when you're about to get blown up. So that doesn't quite work as well. But Resogun is brilliant, really, really good game. The other ones I've played, obviously I played Killzone, which, yeah, you've seen me play Killzone. I'm not the best at shooters in the world, but it looks amazing. To be fair to it, it looks absolutely incredible. The lighting and the best lens flare use I've ever seen. It looks incredible, and I'm sure people who are really into FPSs will get a massive kick out of it. I found the story quite dull. I find the Killzone franchise a little bit dull, so it probably isn't really kind of my kind of game, but it does look fantastic, and it is the probably best example of next-gen visuals on the PlayStation 4. I don't think anyone. Knack, I raced through. It is proper hard, surprisingly, on the harder levels, but it never really feels that rewarding. The visuals, I think, are really good. The cutscenes, though, take most of the story, and the gameplay is actually pretty repetitive. It's okay. I think you can. I don't think it's as bad as some of the reviews have hit it, but it's certainly not a system seller. So likewise, really, Assassin's Creed 4 looks fantastic, and the cross-platform stuff all looks really good on PlayStation 4. But yeah, I would say the same. Really, there isn't one game. Well, as I said, the one game that would sell PlayStation to me is the PlayStation 4 is Resogun. Which is a £12 indie game. I mean, whether that's why you want to buy a next-gen system, I don't know. But I'm still playing it.
So overall, what do you think of the PlayStation 4? Because I tell you what, for me, with the Xbox One, I mean, I'm very excited to have it in my house. I really enjoy playing it. I just get this feeling that there's a box with tons of potential sitting underneath my television. And perhaps the biggest drawback is that potential, as yet, is kind of unrealized. I mean, I'm looking forward to things like The Division and The Crew and Titanfall. And I'm thinking that these things are going to be great. But right now, there's nothing that sells me on this as a system. Now, and the thing is, it's one of those things where you bear in mind that down the line, there are going to be titles that sell this as a system. The thing is, though, that I think that I'm looking at it as more of an investment. I know the games are going to be great down the line, but right now, there's nothing that sells it to me as a system right now. So, I mean, is that the same for you on the PS4?
I think it's the inevitability of consoles, really. I mean, it's been a long time, I would say, going back to kind of Nintendo consoles of yore, that there were like 4 really good games that came out at launch. You know, I mean, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 launched with pretty mediocre games. And I think there was more of a graphical jump there because of the HD. So I think instantly, I know it was 720, but you could see a very notable difference in something like Perfect Dark Zero. You could on the textures and on the whatever. And I think the jump here for some people won't be as significant. But I think it always takes at least a year for the genuinely good games, because developers need time to work on a system. You know, they haven't had dev kits for as long as they would have liked. They're getting the best out of it, so they're learning to work around things. And I think that's just part and parcel of the console. And I think most people know that buying a console, you are an early adopter. You know, there are often issues with any technology earlier on. And so I do think when you think that consoles nowadays have kind of 10-year life cycle, that's how PlayStation 2 had a 10-year life cycle, you're not really going to get the best out of it for a year. So I think all of this kind of slight kind of willy-waving stuff early on between the two is kind of all a bit by the by, because you know, in a year's time, both are going to be incredibly different, because nowadays with firmware as well and updates constantly, you know, they'll have different apps. You know, buying a PlayStation now, buying an Xbox now, will be a completely different experience than it will be in a year or 2 years' time. Look at 360 when it launched. Look at the difference in the software that came in. So yeah, it is an investment in the future. I think for 10 years of games, I don't think 350 quid, 430 quid is a massive investment, really. Obviously it is initially, but that will pay back over a period of time. I think what's interesting is going to be how much games are going to change in that time. You mentioned microtransactions in the interim. How will we be buying our games? How will we be playing our games? I mean, the games are ridiculously expensive, I would say. I mean, like, especially, and the digital games aren't much cheaper. They want this digital vision to come in. They need to cut their prices on digital games. So it'd be very interesting to see how that, and whether people still want a home console in the way they used to now that they play games on their phone, whether things still work. So for me, that's interesting how things will develop. But for me now, PlayStation 4 has good games. If you want to play some good games, you'll play some good games. There's not a lot of selection, and there's a lot more selection on PlayStation 3. When they bring out a new console, they all say the best one you could buy is the old one if you haven't already bought it, because you're getting the best games that have ever been made for it with a massive selection. And they both are incredibly integrated online hubs as well, you know, on demand, you know. PlayStation 4 and Xbox, if I think right, PlayStation 3 has more media on it than the PlayStation 4, and I think the Xbox is the same. Xbox One doesn't have Sky, which Xbox 360 does, etc., etc.
Also, cheaper.
Yeah.
Much cheaper.
But that's always the same. So I think all of this kind of slight kind of shock at this is kind of faux shock, really, because this is what every console launch is like.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of just like, you know, we enjoy the tech. You know, like games, you'll want to buy one of them and you pick your site.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what Valve do in the new year, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, yes, it is.